How long should your long run be? This is a question I get all the time because it's a really important question, and the answer does depend a little bit on what kind of race or goal that you are training for. So as you're building your long run, hopefully just about every week, we should be thinking about the max distance that our long run is going to be capped at, because that's really going to go a long way to building the kind of endurance we need to reach our running goals. Now, before we start, I do want to be upfront. I am bullish on long runs. I am someone who will definitely program long runs into my clients' training pretty much every single week. I really believe in the value of long runs, the fact that long runs go such a long way, to building this specific endurance that we need for a lot of our goals. It'll help build the mitochondria in your cells. It helps prevent a lot of that fatigue you feel later in a run because you're practicing it every single week. So if you're someone who's not sure if you should be doing a long run, you probably shouldn't hire me as your coach. Now, with that said, that doesn't mean that every runner has to be running 20 miles every week for their long run. Now, if you could do that, that would actually be pretty great. And in fact, if you look at a lot of professional runners, every single week, they do a long run that is well into the double digits, likely 15 to 20 miles. And I'm very encouraged by the fact that even middle distance runners often do a 17 to 20 mile long run, because they know even those middle distance races, the mile, the 1500, even the 3K or the 5K, are predominantly aerobic. So if you want the aerobic fitness to excel, even in the middle distance races, a longer long run is going to be a really great idea. So let's get this out of the way. Longer is better almost always when it comes to the long run. Most runners should cap their long run at about 20 miles or maybe about 3.5 hours, whichever one comes first. After about 20 miles, you really start to see diminishing gains of endurance and all the fitness benefits that we want, and the injury risk does increase. Now, this rule can be broken. There are very good runners who frequently go up to 22, maybe even 24 miles when they're marathon training, and that's just fine. These are runners who are probably doing 22 miles in 2.5 hours or less. So the time on feet is substantially less than runners who are not able to cover the distance that quickly. So longer is better within reason and within safety. This video is sponsored by TriBit. These are the MoveBuds H1, and I love these Bluetooth earbuds because number one, they have a 65-hour battery life, which is just ridiculous. And the fact that they're also waterproof. So even though I'm not a heavy sweater, I know that if I am sweating a lot, if it's super hot and I've been out there for a long time, I'm not gonna risk ruining these earbuds. So if you go to tribit.com, you can get your own pair of MoveBuds H1. And the other thing I love about these is the sound quality. They do an amazing job of blocking out outside noise while at the same time delivering really great sound and some pretty good bass. I actually found that a lot of the times I only run or even ride my bike with one earbud in. If I'm riding my bike, definitely on the right side so I can pay attention to traffic. But I found that I don't actually have to turn up the music very loud or a podcast if I'm listening to it, because the sound quality is just so great, and it does block out a lot of wind, especially if you're using it for cycling. So I think it's really fantastic technology for athletes who want to use an earbud while they're exercising and still actually hear the music. So thanks again to TriBit for sponsoring this video. Go to tribit.com to get your own pair of MoveBuds H1. And when it comes to specific race distances, I always like to see at least a double-digit long run. So even if you're training for the mile or the 5K, let's make sure we're getting in at least a 10-mile long run. Now, if you have a background running college track and field or cross country, you'll know that even at those distances where you only might be running the 3K or maybe 8K cross country or 10,000 meters, you're still going to be running 15 to 20 miles as your long run. So at the collegiate level, coaches are pushing their athletes to run substantially higher than the race distance they're training for. That's because if the race distance itself is a challenge, let's say you're training for a half marathon, if you only run 10 or 11 miles in training, 13.1 is going to be a little bit of a challenge to complete. You're going to be able to do it just fine, and you're going to be able to thrive on the race course and finish that race without any big problems. If you are someone who really wants to see what their potential might be, if you really want to see how fast you can run a distance, you need to get comfortable running the distance at an easy effort first, so that then you can focus on running the distance at a fast effort once it becomes manageable and comfortable. So for the 5K or 10K, I love to see runners getting up to 10 to 15 miles at a minimum. For longer races like the half marathon, let's do at least 15, but preferably up to 20 if you can do that. If you have the fitness, if you have the injury resilience, and if you have the time available to get in those distances, it's only going to help your performance on race day. Now for marathoners, this is a little bit different because we don't want to run the marathon distance. It really just becomes too long and the injury risk is too high. So instead, we want to get up to about 18 to 22 miles. 3.5 hours is usually the cap that I like to see runners for their long run. If they can't get up to those distances, let's at least get up to 3.5 hours. That will ensure you have the specific fitness to finish 26.2 miles on race day. And if you are a more competitive runner, you're going to want to get up to 20 or 22 miles and maybe do some goal marathon pace running within those long runs, because now we're focusing on performance. We're not just focusing on finishing the race, we want to run it fast. Now, what if you're someone who can't really run too long? What happens if you're limited by, say, injuries? You can run for a certain amount of time, but your knees always start to ache after an hour and a half of running, so you can never run longer than about 10 miles. Well, we can always supplement with cross training. You might notice that I'm wearing a cycling shirt, I've got my cycling gloves on, and I'm out actually for a bike ride right now. I recently did a video on supercharged base training and how we can supplement our running with other aerobic exercise to reach higher levels of fitness. We can do this with our long run too. So if you're someone who can only run for an hour, hour and a half, or 2 hours before your body starts rebelling against you, we can do more with cycling or pool running and supplement our aerobic development. So even if you're someone who's limited by injury, don't think that you can't still go long on the bike or in the pool. So if you're not sure how long you should be running for your long run, try to get into the double digits no matter what kind of race that you're training for. If you're training for the really long stuff like the marathon, let's get up to 18 to 22 miles or 3.5 hours. Don't forget that we can always supplement with cross training. Long runs are one of the most important workouts for runners because they work on the most important physical skill we want as endurance runners, endurance. So let's not skimp on it, let's prioritize it, and if we do, we're all gonna be much faster runners because of it.